all the things that has happened in the past 2 weeks. And it was just like mind blown emoji. There's like, okay, great.
Was the first time that I'd really gone, okay, I actually can execute and I do have good ideas. Like, printing out business card. And I'm like, am I allowed to put CEO on there? Like, I felt like such a fraudster.
What went through your mind, by the way, when you asked for 50 and he said $1 million?
You know what? Like, the past is the past. These things happen. Like, whatever else. Like, I learned a lot from it. And I said, and ultimately, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have become an entrepreneur. And he said, are you thanking me for that?
Wow.
And I thought about it and I was like, yeah, I probably would have been better off if I'd never become an entrepreneur.
So when you hit 5 years, is that one? Did you hit one?
Yeah.
From 0 to 1?
I don't know.
Have you hit one yet?
Maybe when I hit 1 billion.
There you go. All right, you set your one. The bar is set.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how you doing?
Good. I just read that for maximum recording quality, I should have my computer plugged in.
There you go.
Trying to be a good pupil.
We want maximum stream quality. We just had a call yesterday, and I feel like the way things move these days, there's so much to catch you up on. Things change so quick, but amazing. Well, thanks for joining and taking the time.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat.
Yeah. So I'm excited to I want to get into the sort of advisee role relationship that we have. But I think really for this, what we're focused on is Miss Tyler and your background, and the idea from a 0 to 1 perspective is. 0 to 1 is great. And I've always thought, though, that I'm not really sure what 1 is. And so 0 to being that's the point that I feel like I'm at, where I don't know what 1 is yet or what I will feel like when I hit 1. And so, I'm really interested to, for us to sort of dive into the early days of Miss Tyler, or actually maybe go back first before that. And you when you were at Mint, and then that place where you sort of decided to head down a different path.
Yeah. Well, I might take you back even further than that.
Nice. Let's do it. Totally.
Yeah, because I, never really set out to be an entrepreneur, and it sort of happened for me in sort of an unusual way. My background, by the way, and we'll get into Miss Tyler and what it is, but it's not telecommunications, which is what my background is. And I'm Australian, as you can hear from my accent, and I moved to New York in 2011. And my background to that point had been sales and marketing. So I was in New York running sales and marketing for a telecommunications company. And while I was in that role, and we did virtual calling cards, so essentially cheap calls to different places around the world. And when I was there, I met with a company that was doing roaming SIM cards. So for people traveling around the world. And at that time, 70% of people would turn off cellular data when they traveled because the fear of bill shock, there's $20 a megabyte.
Yeah, exactly.
It's there was always articles flights to Portugal, 300 pounds, my phone bill, 3,000 pounds.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So I met with a company that was doing this really cool technology where they were essentially combining IMSIs, which is the international mobile subscriber identity that sits on a SIM card. They were merging a bunch of IMSIs onto one SIM card so that when you're in Europe, you acted like a local SIM card and you got local rates. When you're in America, you act like a local. And so it was very interesting. And so I basically, the company I worked for was privately owned. And I said to the owner, I said, I think we should trial this as a separate product. And I put together a business feasibility review about how much I thought it would cost. And I basically was if you can give me $50,000, I can pilot this just on the side. And he said, I think it's a great idea. And I think a great idea with someone who can execute is worth something. So I'm going to give you $1 million. And I want you to hand over your job, your day job, and you're now the CEO of this company. Go set it up. And so I had never thought about being an entrepreneur. And I remember having conversations with a friend and I was like, printing out business card and I'm like, am I allowed to put CEO on there? Like I felt like such a fraudster. But
Oh my gosh.
yeah, so that was kind of just like this crazy, crazy thing, which, in hindsight, like, it really is like that powerful. And if there is a big opportunity and there is, you know, something that you're doing differently and there is an opportunity, then honestly, like, especially like in these sort of businesses that really are design, like by design kind of require venture backing, then,
Mhm.
having a bit of money is the thing that can really test quickly, like, is there something here? And having focus, which, we've talked about, it's really hard when you're starting a startup and you're doing something as a side hustle because startups are so all encompassing. So anyway, that was kind of like my foray into becoming an entrepreneur. Definitely, like we launched the product was called Doodad, and we were on like TechCrunch and NextWeb and Gizmodo, and we were growing revenue 10% week on week for 6 months straight. And the critical flaw was that I had 4% equity in this company that I was running, and I had no control. And this investor, for a bunch of different reasons, was overexposed in terms of his energy. Honestly,
Mhm.
not even the financials. And he basically wanted to reduce his portfolio and focus on enterprise. So anything consumer facing had 2 weeks to shut down. And he wasn't interested in a sale or anything. So that was kind of what happened. So it was kind of like I was already booked in to speak at some conferences around the world. And so I still went and I was, standing there like, hi, I'm Sarah, the CEO of Doodad that closed 2 weeks ago. And this is, my experience.
And here's my
Yeah.
story. Yeah,
And here's like,
exactly.
my experience of 12 months of setting up and shutting down an MVNO, like a mobile virtual network operator. And at one of these conferences, David Glickman, who is the CEO of Mint Mobile, was also presenting. And he had been watching Doodad and had reached out. And I'd never replied because I was very busy. But
Right.
at the time, Mint Mobile didn't even exist. He had a company called Ultra Mobile, and he said, we need someone entrepreneurial on our team. We're growing really, really fast. And so I joined him and that team, and that business, which nobody's heard of, Ultra Mobile, was number one on the Inc. 5000. So it literally was the fastest growing private company in America. It did
Oh my gosh.
$118 million in revenue in its first full year of operations, like insane. Um, and that was essentially a product for immigrants and people that wanted to make cheap international calls, but it just bundled it on top of like essentially a T-Mobile cell service. So that was the product, and from that we then incubated this brand Mint Mobile 3 years later. And so at the end of my time there, yeah, we brought Ryan Reynolds on as an owner of the business, and everything,
Yeah.
like, it went from being, like, working for this company that no one had heard of to, like, all of a sudden being, like, very cool. Um, yeah,
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
but
What a roller coaster.
yeah, but the experience of Doodad was the first time that I'd really gone, "Okay, I actually can execute, and I do have good ideas." And once you know how to execute, it becomes very hard to not want to execute when you see a really big opportunity. It's really hard.
Right.
And I know, I mean, you're like one of the most action biased people I've ever met. So, but it's like when you know that you can just like do stuff. So, like, while I was and I was on a visa, I should say. So, like, that was also a
Okay.
restriction for me. So, I needed to be employed by someone, which worked for Doodad because I had such a small percentage and I was earning market salary, but I couldn't just go off and do my own thing. So, I really had this like drive to be an entrepreneur, but I also really wanted to be in New York. So, that was kind of what I was straddling. And on the side, I started building apps. So, like, the first app I built was launched in 2014, and it was like a very simple weather app. And then I launched a festival friend finder app a couple of years later.
Nice.
And then I was working on a few other things, but they were all like kind of like little small side hustle things that I was kind of, it was like a hobby. It was fun for me. Um, and Mys Tyler was an idea that I've had the domain since 2014. So I've had the idea for a very long time. And it wasn't until 2020 that I basically was like, I'd had 6 years of pent up entrepreneurial energy. And I was like, I can't not be doing this anymore.
Right.
So, and
Right.
Mys Tyler was too big an idea to do as a side hustle. And so I sadly left New York and moved back to Australia where I didn't have the visa constraints. And I joined a program called Antler, which I got accepted into, which is like it's a 3 to 6 month incubator designed to help sort of these early stage businesses get off the ground. So, so I did that. And so, yeah, I guess your question, where did Mys Tyler come from? So my background is obviously telco, but really my background, I would say, is like marketing. And, marketing is all about just like understanding customers, understanding insights, on one hand to know how to communicate to them, in a compelling way or how to reach them, but also like once you understand people's problems, you actually start thinking about how to solve them. And so you're like, well, how can we
Mm.
change the product to solve it better? Or how do we create a new product to solve it better? So I think, like um, this kind of whole idea of product market or, like minimum viable product and product
Mhm.
market fit, like a lot of the times, and it was actually interesting the process going through Antler because in Antler, it's very different to a traditional incubator where you pitch an idea with a team and you get an amount of funding and a period of time where they'll help you. Antler is almost like a step before that. So it's kind of like if you want to be a founder, but you may not have a team, you may not have an idea, but you are willing to sort of, move into this phase. They put you all together, and the idea is that you start to matchmake. So you start to meet other people that are like wannabe founders that are willing to take their
Right.
risk at the same time. Um, and then if you can find someone that's a complement to you skill wise, so generally like a commercial person and a technical person, and you can find someone who can be passionate about the same problem to solve, then you form a team. And then at the end of the 3 months, you pitch your team with your idea and you get the money. And I thought going in that everybody would have ideas. And so I was trying to be like, oh, I have ideas, but, obviously like I'll be open-minded if somebody's idea is better, whatever.
Girl.
But
Yeah.
it was actually really surprising to me that like a lot of people don't actually have ideas. And, there was a bunch, people came from different backgrounds. And you had a lot of people that came from like management consulting. And when I looked at how they were so like analytical, they were like, what's a big market that's growing fast? Okay, so whatever fields, like
Right.
ed tech, whatever it is, like how do we now find a business in that we can work in? As opposed to, I sort of feel like the way that I've always operated is like from these like really small, tiny like insights and like these sort of aha moments where it's kind of like, oh, that was really annoying. Why is that so annoying? And is there a solution to that annoyance?
Yeah.
The other sort of category of people that came through Antler that were interesting were people that were like, maybe they were a lawyer or like they were in some sort of specialized field where they could find annoyances that were like really scalable that, traditional entrepreneurs trying to solve problems aren't aware of because they're not lawyers.
Yeah.
And so that was like the other sort of like really interesting, place to find these problems is like, it's very specific use case that's still like, got a large market for it. But yeah, so I actually found that interesting. And so Mys Tyler, it was one of these aha moments where literally, in all my years of telco, did not learn much about fashion. And has just never really been for me like a priority. It's kind of like I'll turn up. Um,
Yeah.
and I don't care if I don't look perfect. I'd prefer to be somewhere then I can function. I can function no matter what I'm wearing. But
Right.
I do have to get dressed and I do feel better when I like what I wear, but I find the process really difficult. Like I don't know, like I find it overwhelming. Like what do I pick up? What do I put together? When I go shopping, it's like there's just so many options. And so I would default just to, kind of like a uniform or just like jeans and a t-shirt, which is totally fine in startup culture, but I could have been doing better. And so at one point I decided, I'm going to like elevate my wardrobe. So I took one of my girlfriends who's just like always, you know, put together, just knows what is on trend, knows what's appropriate for different situations. And we went
Mm.
shopping and I was like, look, just pick out 3 outfits for me that I can just like add into my rotation. And I very quickly realized that she's perfected the art of dressing for somebody who is blonde and shorter and curvier, and she has no
Right.
idea what's gonna suit me. And so it was kind of like this, like, oh, so she's just not good at fashion. She's like really practiced the art of like what suits her. So how do I then just find somebody who looks like me that's perfected the art of dressing for me,
Yeah.
and I like their style and they're better at it and I can just copy them. So back in 2014, this is the day of like, I don't even know whether the term creator existed yet. It was like the blogger,
Yeah, exactly.
And but so you'd have all these fashion bloggers, but you'd never be able to see their height. Like, they, unless they happen to mention it in one comment somewhere, like you just wouldn't know. And even if proportionally someone looks like you, like if they're 5'2" and you're 5'8", things are very different.
Totally different. Yeah.
So the whole concept of Mys Tyler, which was just how do we create like a version of Instagram for women's fashion where you could put in your height and your size and we match you to the creators who are your height and size. And so you can just find people that look like you and
So great.
copy them.
That's amazing. There's a few really interesting things I want to unpack there. I think one of the things that's interesting, what went through your mind, by the way, when you asked for 50 and he said 1 million?
I mean, obviously shock because like, I just never sort of thought.
Somewhere in your brain, you're probably thinking maybe he says 100, maybe 75. Well,
I mean, I like in
yeah.
in my mind, I wasn't even thinking that he would offer more. I would just be like,
Uh,
sure, I'll fund this thing. If anything, it'd be like, well, you're gonna have to
right.
get less money. You know,
Yeah.
I didn't even consider that he would like say there's more money or anything like that. But I mean, it is interesting because obviously, like shutting down Doodad was kind of devastating. Like, I had to fire my whole team and myself. There'd been so many suppliers that had literally bent over backwards and done so many favors for us. And, we were just getting started, and we were like on such a good track. And then we also only gave customers essentially 48 hours notice. And so it was kind of like in 48 hours notice, you're not going to have connectivity. So you need to find something new. And
Oh my goodness.
we'd actually built the brand. I mean, the brand was awesome. Our tagline was "When in Rome," which is like, how cute is
That's great.
that? And
Yeah.
there was a lot of personality to it. It was like, if on the help section, it was like, if you need help, ask your mom. And if she doesn't know, then email us at I need help at, Doodad. But
That's great.
we were very human throughout the whole process. Like, and if we made a mistake, we would share it. And at this time, we were basically like, look, we're sorry, we're giving you such little notice, but we really didn't want to shut down Doodad. So we were really trying to save it until the end. And we didn't get any negative responses. We just had people coming back and saying, thanks for giving it a go. Like, we really love this product. Is there anything you can do to help? So, I mean, like, that was pretty amazing. But, I didn't speak to that investor for it's sort of like ever after. But then in
Yeah.
February this year, I ran into him in San Francisco and it was actually like just really nice. And I said to him, you know what, like the past is the past. These things happen, like whatever else. Like I learned a lot from it. And I said, and ultimately, if it wasn't for you, I wouldn't have become an entrepreneur. And he said, are you thanking me for that?
Wow.
And I thought about it and I was
amazing.
like, yeah, I probably would have been better off if I'd never become an entrepreneur.
No, but what's so interesting is that it was such a gift that you got this sort of like um, entrepreneurial startup with guardrails in a sort of setting where you already had sort of experience, people in and around there, and you had some money and and so you got to sort of start from that base, which is really interesting. And then I imagine in your mind a, a a switch flipped when you said, "I got an idea," and someone went, "Great, here's 1 million." And you went, "Oh, wait. This is a thing? I can have an idea and somebody will literally give me $1 million," which is, I imagine, when you first start, and obviously what I've gone through is the first couple times you start pitching investors, right? And you're sort of like, I'll ask, I don't wanna oversell this, and I'm gonna be conservative with it, and I'm gonna like, and all these sort of things are going through your mind. But so interesting that one of your first entrepreneurial experiences was saying, here's an idea, and someone went, "Great, here's 1 million."
And I should say, for anyone listening that has found fundraising a difficult experience, I too find fundraising a very difficult experience.
So
It is really tough, and that was not Like, I've never had that experience again.
Yeah,
That was
no.
very atypical. And it came with its downsides. I had no control, and I ended up having this incredible business, like, incredible business, and in hindsight, what I know now, I probably could have gone and, you know, given him, like, a big check to acquire it,
Right.
or, so anyway, but I mean, yeah, but fundraising, we'll get into that because, while I technically fundraised, I guess, for that, I didn't really, and so going into startups again, like all these like little apps I'd done on the side, I just like bootstrapped. It was kind of just like my play money.
Mhm.
I saw it as like educational funds.
Yeah.
Um, but Miss Tyler was like such a big idea that I needed to fundraise, and um, fundraising is really, really hard.
Yeah.
And I think as well, it's harder in Australia. I think if I'd found a way to sort of be in America, it's hard. It's hard anywhere. It's hard for everyone, but it's
Yeah.
harder.
Well, it changes so much from, I in past lives, life, I, did acting and, very similar to the audition process, right? And you have to sort of get used to the fact that you could literally audition twice in one day and do the same thing, and one person is like, "Oh my gosh, that's so great," and the next person is like, "That is a terrible choice," and you just, like, you can't take whatever you get from one person, or the enthusiasm of the next person and sort of like bank on that. You almost have to put all of that in the soup and then sort of stir it around and like, make judgment calls on stuff and find a way to, I guess, just listen to your gut and to the people around you, like your advisors. Wink. Um, but very similar to that thing is that, you could feel like you nailed the deck and you've got your pitch down or whatever, and you're just sure this is such a big problem with such a big upside. And the next five people are like, no, it's, I don't know. But that doesn't mean it's not right. It's just like, that's the volume game.
100%. And most investors aren't gonna, like, understand it as much as you do. And, I mean, it is very true, though, like, investors have different styles. Like, so some of them will just, like, play the devil's advocate, or some of them will sort of, like, keep their cards close to their chest, whereas, like, some of them will just, like, get really enthusiastic with you and kind of, like, go down, like, the journey of, like, sort of, like, getting to really understand it, and that can be really
Mhm.
energizing. But, I guess what I've learned is that, like, honestly, sometimes, like, the easiest, the quickest, fastest checks are sort of the ones that you don't expect, and the ones that you think is, like, a no-brainer, and that you feel like you're just, like, so in, just, like,
Right.
doesn't go anywhere. So it is actually
Yeah.
it's hard to know, but I mean, it is ultimately it's a numbers game. It's you just need
Yeah.
to be speaking to enough people because even if they like the idea, it's also about what else they have going on at the time, like how much funds they have, where they're looking to deploy, what else they're looking at. Um,
And how else can they be a help from a partner perspective or from,
mm,
or connections or whatever? Is it just money? And there's so many different aspects to it. But um, yeah, that's well, and the other thing that I thought was really interesting was, um, going through kinda Mint also and starting again in that sort of young sort of growth and seeing a bit of that trajectory. You got a little bit of early to mid stage, right,
yeah.
of seeing something else grow.
Actually, one great thing, I mean, there's a lot of great things about, Mint and David, the CEO in particular, like, he is, I used to help him. We used to do, like, thought leadership pieces for, like, Forbes and things like that, and, we sort of, like, talked about David as being, like, this guru of hyper growth because prior to Ultra, he'd had 2 other companies that had both been number 1 on the Inc. 5000.
Oh, wow.
So
He's just got that.
he was the only person that's ever had multiple, I think 3 businesses that have been, like, number 1 on the Inc. 5000. And it's not like, you're just hacking the game. I mean, he did $118 million in revenue in the first full year of operations. It's like, that is like, these are
Gosh,
significant businesses. So,
there's a cheat code in there somewhere.
I think it's just he thinks really big. Like, he just thinks
Mhm.
really big. Like, for as an example, I was chatting to him because I think I'm generally, you know, resourceful. Like, resourceful, I would say, is, like, my greatest strength. I kind of assume that I don't have much, and I have to be, like, super effective with what I have. Um, David just thinks bigger. He just, so I was saying to him, so the whole idea of Mys Tyler is obviously like, that we've got these crowdsourced fashion inspiration and people showing you what you can buy. And I should say that so where we are today, just with Mys Tyler, just to give context. So we launched it and like incorporated in March 2020. So we're like coming up to like nearly 5 years since incorporation. But obviously I'd been working on this idea since 2014. But we've had 650,000 women have downloaded our app. We've got like thousands of creators. The two kind of key things that have come out of it, for proof points, is that 86% of our users are more body confident just by using our app. Because in the world of fashion is not representative. Most people are looking at bodies that don't look like theirs, and then it doesn't make them feel good. So by seeing people who look like you that are also stylish and confident, it's kind of like inspiration that's accessible, which is amazing. But then, like even probably more, so like from a consumer point of view, like that's honestly like kind of our mission and our driving force, is that, we can do this, we can play this role where we can actually just like help women feel good about themselves and find clothes that make them feel great. But like sort of more of like an efficiency of the industry point of view, the return rate in fashion and apparel is like 40% for online. It's like huge, and it's like very costly, and it's, very inefficient, and it's got big sustainability impacts as well. Our return rate is less than 5%. So it's like 6 times lower. So we're sort of doing some really incredible things there. And
I love that. Um, one of the things I want to go into is that early spark or that early moment. You had that aha moment when you were with your friend and you're trying on clothes, but you also had that idea earlier and it sort of incubated for a little bit. What was the like, and then you had the experience of starting to try like building apps. What was that sort of turning point when all of those like meshed into the like, I think this is what I'm gonna start in on?
yeah, so I guess the first part was, I was like, well, this is my experience, but most people just know how to get dressed. Like this is like a me problem. But as I sort of would talk about my idea with friends over the next 6 years, so I guess like informally validating, I realized that actually everybody was like, oh no, I would love that too. Like even people who love fashion and I would say are very confident were like, oh my God, that would be amazing. And I always had a lot of ideas. And it was the idea that my friends kept saying, like, out of all your ideas, when are you going to build Mys Tyler? So there was kind of that. Then two things that actually, while I was working at Mint Mobile, I launched our affiliate marketing. And so I, sort of like did a deep dive into this whole space of affiliate, and I got us set up, and it became very quickly like one of our, best performing acquisition channels for Mint Mobile. And I realized how scalable it was. And then on the other side, I was also looking at our influencer marketing, and I could sort of see these shifts away from macro influencers towards like micro nano creators that were like potentially more authentic, more engaging, more relatable. But in the world of like influencers at that point, it had kind of been like, if you want to work with an influencer, you've got to reach out to them management agency, then you've got to negotiate a
Mhm.
rate, and then you've got to do a contract, and so
Yeah.
now you could sort of see this sort of this pattern where it's like, well, if you've got these micro nano creators, you can't, like, they don't have agencies. You can't necessarily do like these big paid deals. Like that's not scalable. Now that you're doing it with a lot more people to achieve the same results. So
Mhm.
I could sort of see, like LTK was doing it, Like to Know It was doing it, where it was like, okay, so now we're going to start paying influencers with affiliate. And even in those early days, it was like influencers were using like promo codes. And that was kind of just like a way, they weren't getting affiliate commission, but it was a way for brands to see who was actually driving conversions. So I could
Right.
sort of see like this whole pattern of like affiliate and micro nano creators. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. This kind of like could be the business model behind Mys Tyler. So I think those things sort of all came together. So really it was, 6 years of pent up entrepreneurial energy, like 6 years of like informally validating. It was, these drivers of like the, sophistication of affiliate platforms now, and, this growing network of people, like everyday people that were comfortable sharing, content. on his platform. So I already had lots of people doing the right behavior. And then I guess one other final point was I'd kind of been thinking as well about like, how would I launch this? Because launching a marketplace, you've got a cold start problem. Like, how do I get creators when I don't have a product? How do I get a product if I don't have creators? Because creators are the product. And so I'd been thinking about that a lot. And I'd had this idea that I could use celebrity data as like a proxy. So I basically had started Googling. And it's interesting that you can Google any celebrity and there's a site that will give you their hips, bust, chest measurements.
Oh, wow.
You can Google their bra size, their height, their hair color, their
That's
eye
crazy.
color. You can find their age. So I started just like on my nights, I built this database, which ended up being 450 celebrities. And I was like focused on tall celebrities, short celebrities, petite celebrities, like plus size celebrities, curvy celebrities, like anyone to try and have diversity. And so that was kind of like in my
I just
mind.
imagine you like seeing someone out in real life and being like, "Oh, look, it's Dustin Hoffman. He's a 36
Well,
win."
it's like the people that have worked in my men's wear.
Yeah, exactly.
But so I'd kind of been building that as well. So I was like, this would be like a really cool like PR sort of like angle. And so that's actually what we ended up doing is we built an algorithm so that we launched with a Facebook quiz, and it was basically like me and I think it was like Alexa Chung. And so it was like a photo of me, a photo of Alexa Chung, and it said, Alexa Chung is my 98% body double, celebrity body double, who's yours? And it was one ad.
Right.
And I just ran that on Facebook, and you went off Facebook into this really like not very attractive landing page with like a sort of a basic quiz, and it asked for all your personal body data, like your bra size. And then you had to put in your email address. And then if you did all of that, you got your like celebrity body double. And we had 36,000 women do this quiz at a
Oh my gosh.
cost of like 10 cents an email, which was insane.
That's unbelievable.
So I think that was kind of like how we got started. And that was enough validation for me to get the first checks.
Yeah.
And then I used that to essentially build the celebrity body double into an app. So the first version of the app was you just putting your stuff and you found your celebrity body match. And then we sort of built upon that a little bit. But at the same time, we started accepting applications from creators. So once people were on this platform, we were like, hey, do you want to be a creator on this platform? Like, apply, and you have to apply with 4 outfit posts. And so 6 months later, we had 180 creators that had posted 4 times. And so
Oh, wow.
6 months later, we launched creators onto the platform. And then a short time after, we took away the celebrities. And so that's kind of how we got there. So I think, yeah, all those different things, and the kind of like having like an idea about like how to get started in a sort of a small way to kind of validate and, just start building the building blocks.
I love that. That's so great. And it's thinking about the ad itself and getting all of the signups and having your proof point, and then immediately having a sort of captive audience of potential users, and then sort of having a light POC of what you wanted to do with a bit of a gatekeeping for content creators, that you didn't have to sort of like have everything fleshed out for them. It was a little like, with the application process. And then you sort of hit critical mass, right? Where you had both users and creators to be able to start matching. That's so great. Then where was that point when you made that switch from taking off the celebrity piece and also sort of starting to let creators sort of into the program and interfacing with Mys Tyler?
So we launched the celebrity just like this simple like Facebook landing page quiz in like, I think it was March. We had like a very early version. And then by August, we launched the first version of the app. So we moved really fast. And then I think it was February that we launched creators onto the platform. And then because we only had 180 creators versus 450 celebrities. So, we were really focused on, we really wanted to make sure that we had enough diversity. And so we didn't want somebody to come into the app and be like, oh, nobody looks like me. That's a really bad experience. So at the time, having the blend between celebrities and creators was great, because it's like essentially the way it worked is you'd fill in the quiz and you'd essentially get shown all 450 or 600 people in order of relevance. So the person most like you at the top, and you could scroll down to the least valuable person, least relevant person. And so when we had like the blend, it was like you might have got like a celebrity match, then a creator match, creator, celebrity. And so we were sort of nervous about taking away the creators and just like having just 180 people. And we were like, do we have enough diversity? At the time, we were going to like, we were talking about like, we would only unlock or remove celebrities for people that had X number of matches above 70% or whatever else. And we ended up just like not doing anything that complicated. We just like made it available. And we were also nervous. Like I had a lot of investors saying to me, oh, of course you've had success because everybody wants to see celebrities, but nobody wants to see real women. And I was like, yeah, they do. And when we launched the creators, we started getting all this feedback from people like, how do I skip through the celebrities to find the real people? You know,
That's amazing.
so
I love
that was really nice and validating. And so when we took out the celebrities, we really never had anyone go like, where did the celebrities go? It was kind of just like, this is what it is now.
I love one of those moments where in the back of your mind, you're like, ha, the know-it-all is not right. That's so great. That's such a great moment. So that was in the you're in 4 years and 9 months. Where was that in that sort of period when you took away celebrities completely?
Yeah, so it was probably like a year after incorporating the business. So like we incorporated in March, what is it? April, May, June, July, August. Like 6 months later, we had an app. 6 months later, we added creators.
Nice.
Probably 3 months later, we took away the celebrities. And so then it was kind of like, but I mean, like when I talk MVP, like this was so MVP. When we first launched, you couldn't even like a photo. You couldn't actually interact with anything. Like,
It just showed you a photo.
got your matches and you couldn't do anything. So we had all these creators that were like adding all these posts, but they're like, they have no idea if anyone's looking at them. They have no idea if anyone's liking them. You couldn't comment.
Right.
So like us launching the like button was like a feature that so like down the track. So when you think about it, it's like we had creators, and so we did have like the app, and it's like essentially we delivered what we intended to deliver, but it was really stripped down. It was very like, very simple. So we launched, we launched the heart button, which was like a big deal. And then it was a while later that we added the ability to add a comment,
Oh,
So, I mean, really, I mean, because also we really didn't have much cash. It's not like we were like, I never even had like, the $1 million from Doodad, like I was sort of raising off a safe note. And so I kind of got like 300,000 Australian, which is like 200,000 American, at the beginning. And then sort of like a year later, I raised a little bit more. And so it kind of like I think I raised, $1 million Australian basically like within the first 12 months, but it took me the whole 12 months to raise that.
right.
And so it was kind of like, if you think about it as being a bit more drip funding, as opposed to like when you do like a sort of a bigger round, you can plan out a little bit more. Like you know that you've got runway, that you can actually hire like certain people because whereas like if I only had this much money, I couldn't hire people because I wouldn't know whether I'd be able to pay them in 3 months' time. So
you don't just have to like focus on a feature for a budget,
Yeah. So it really was like we were kind of like I was constantly fundraising, really. Like I didn't stop. It was kind of like just like a safe note that was open. And so I was sort of building and then constantly like raising. And then, it is hard. And I'm a sole founder, which is really difficult because fundraising is a very different task to operating. Like when you're operating, I mean, one, you're sort of like, scoping out things and building things, but you're also essentially like a problem solver. So what you're essentially focused on day to day is like, what is the biggest problem in the business right now that I need to solve for? What is the weakest link? So all you're doing is thinking about like the weakest links and all the problems.
And trying to find little glimmers where you could sort of get ahead of something where you're like, I got half of building a newsletter done today. Like just little like incremental sort of things while sort of still trying to make sure that the ship doesn't fall apart.
But then just like to sort of come back to that point. So like if you're focused day to day on the problems, but then when you pitch investors, like you have to completely pivot because for investors, it's all about what is the opportunity?
Right.
Like what are all the amazing things that are going right? And so it can be really hard, like when you're going like focusing on problems to like, oh no, everything's amazing and like this is so great. And then like back to the
Yeah.
problems. Like that is
Right.
exhausting.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I like there have been days, and I will say it's actually it works out great from an advisor perspective that you're in Australia because when we do our calls later in the day, I don't know if you noticed, but sometimes I get on the call and it's like 6:30 or 7 or something like that, and I'm just worn. And I've had a couple of days where I'm like, I don't want to like work on this thing or whatever it is. But what's amazing is that then I think when you and I get into sort of talking about like solving some of these things and from a sole founder perspective, um, we just brought Martina on as a co-founder, but my first sort of 6 months, you're just in those problems. And if you don't talk to anybody about it and you just kind of go to bed, like you stay in that thing. And I think what's been energizing for me is, and where the time zone has sort of benefited is in the end of the day, you and I start talking about stuff where it's kind of like, oh, this is what it's the feedback we got, and this is the thing we got, and whatever it is. And you and I work through it. And then I've had a couple of times where we hang up and I'm like, yeah, oh, this is what we're gonna go do. And like, and then it's almost like I want to go to bed and I want to get up early and I want to start like cranking on stuff. So it's one of the, and I actually spoke to somebody today. I've been passing all of your knowledge along. I actually talked to somebody today who is offering me an advisory role because I basically have been telling them what you're telling me.
It should be a
But
pyramid scheme and I should get a portion of this.
and then she just has to be an advisor for someone. But like, but it is one of those that like it. I think she's in that same role. It's a single founder, and so you just sort of sit with your own
Mhm.
sort of hypotheses about. And so I encouraged her, not saying I was gonna do it, but then she said, "Why don't you do it?" But I was encouraging her. I was like, "You gotta find somebody," like, I was like, I told her that you're my, like, matrix buster. I was like, "You gotta find somebody who will get you out of your own head and that you can just sort of, like you can go blah, and they go, 'Okay, hold on one second. Like, don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. I've seen that before. Not a big deal. This is the thing you should focus on, and you could do this other thing.'" And then all of a sudden you're like, "Oh, yeah," and then sort of, like, the clouds part, and you're like, "Everything's fine again." So I that's one of the biggest parts of sort of the advisor,
Definitely, just
um
being able to process, like, there's so much going on, like, being able to process it. And again, like, so we spoke about this yesterday, and again, just back to, like, earlier in this call, like, I'm very good at being resourceful. I kind of probably have a bit more of, like, a scarcity mindset, which I need to work on. But so for me, it's important for me, and, it's great being around a lot of founders, because, everyone like, will be quite vulnerable and share sort of like their challenges, and that can be great. But also you
Mhm.
kind of need to hang around with the people that are like the ballers that are like, oh yeah, our hedge fund's up like, 29% this year. I'm gonna get like $1 million bonus. Because like
Yeah,
you need to
exactly.
remind yourself that there's those things are there. And for me, like David Glickman, he's sort of like he's very much like a big thinker. Like, so when, I had Miss Tyler, he was like, oh, you need to get some celebrities on the app. And I was like, well, kind of like the idea is not even so much about celebrities. It's just about like everyday people. And he's like, I know, but imagine if you had like Heidi Klum. And I was like, well, I don't know whether she's like totally representative. And he's like, fine, have Heidi Klum and Oprah and, get like five celebrities. I'm like, oh, my
You're writing
dream.
these down? Like, "Let me just email these people and see if they're
But I mean,
interested
like,
in
I
it."
would never think that was possible. I would think, well, I couldn't even
Right.
get one, but one doesn't really do the job. By the way, if I had any one person, it would be like Serena Williams. I think she would be incredible.
Yeah,
So if anyone knows
totally.
her, just please,
Yeah,
but,
we'll put out the
I think it is good to have
yeah.
like a balance of people, like some people who might be like a little bit more like rational or like, what can you control and like how can you be like resourceful? And then also have these like big picture people that can kind of be like, because honestly, in startups, the big picture, like crazy ideas sometimes happen. And when they do, they're incredible.
Yo, totally. I went to a talk, when I was in San Francisco, and Zuckerberg actually was on stage, for the, Acquired podcast. It was really cool to see Chase Stadium pretty much, mostly full, for a podcast recording. And Mark talking about the early days, and he was like, "I'm just driving around San Francisco," and he's like, "I had this like project that I was doing," but he's like, "I never thought of it as like a business," and he was like thinking like, what should I do and where should I go work or whatever. Like, it's just so interesting to think, of where things can start from and that you kind of have this like college connection group community and you just don't think of that as now the I don't know what they are, it's 100 billion plus, and so yeah, you never know, and I think it does also help to sort of bust you out of those I can't get the website's not working and somebody did a support ticket and you're in the muck and mire of it is also to balance that with being able to also have people who are sort of like, wait. This could be like multi billions or whatever it is. And you're
Yeah.
like, oh yeah. And it's
Yeah.
whatever it is that takes you wherever you are and just can pull you all the way to the other side. So you almost counterbalance in a much better, more centric, objective place than like staying in the optimistic or pessimistic too much.
Yeah. Actually, one thing that we did, and like coming back to your like zero to you know,
Hmm.
we
Yeah.
which we stopped doing, but we had like a tab, like we had like this like Google sheet that's kind of like all our stuff on it. And we have like a tab for hits and a tab for misses. And so like when something goes wrong, like, oh, when we first launched our customer support, it wasn't connected. So people would email us and we were responding to them, but for like 3 months, nobody ever got a response from us. Like, so we were sending these things, but it was not connected. I mean, like, that's a pretty big miss. Like, but
No one ever writes back. I guess we solved their problem. Like,
that was on
oh
the
my
misses
gosh.
tab. And then on the hits tab, you'd have things like we had this like amazing, at the very beginning, we had this article in like BuzzFeed and we got like 5,000 downloads from that one thing. Or it's like the first, the day that we launched creators onto the app, or the day that we launched the app, or it gets approved by the App Store or Google Play or whatever. So you have like this running list of like hits, and
Mhm.
these hits at the time feel massive. Like these feel like
Yeah.
0 to like each one of them is like is an and then the hits kind of, I guess they feel really big and detrimental at the time. But when you look back at it, you're like, oh my God, imagine back then we were excited by that. Look at how far we've come. Because sometimes it happens so fast that you kind of feel like you haven't got anywhere. It feels like you haven't made much progress. But then you look back at this and you're like, it was only 3 months ago that we were so excited by that.
Totally.
And
A
then you look,
week can be just like I've caught up with somebody a week ago. I caught up with somebody, 2 weeks ago when I was at Tech Week, and we caught up again today, and they started sort of saying, "Okay, I've got some ideas for you." And I was like, "You got it. Hold on just a second. Let me catch you up to all the things that have happened in the past 2 weeks." And it was just like mind blown emoji. There's like, "Okay, great. This is a good baseline. Now let's talk about." But yeah, things move so fast that
so I think, yeah,
yeah.
recording that stuff is great because you do forget it. So like having just like a little like I would suggest this for any entrepreneur, have it like a little tab, and every time something really amazing happens, write it down. Anytime something bad happens, write it down. You can go back and reflect on that at the end of the quarter and just be like, so we would do that. At the end
Mhm.
of the quarter, I would read back and be like, this is the lifeline of things that happened this quarter. And you can just hear it building, and like that's really incredible. And you're like, "Ah."
Yeah.
But again, the misses, you're like, oh, look how much we've navigated through, you know?
Yeah, totally. We're actually, Martina and I are starting a second podcast called Building Stackless. And essentially, it's like trying to record as much of that stuff. I had
Mm.
one where I was completely, and I didn't even know it, but I was completely 100%. When your battery shuts off and you hit the power thing and it just shows the battery icon and it's like, I'm not going to do anything. I was that way last Friday. And I woke up on Saturday and I felt fluey and I went back to bed and I slept for 3 hours. I got up and had some lunch. I went back to bed for 3 hours. I got up a little bit and sort of hung out with the fam for a little bit, went back to bed and slept like 13 hours, and then did it again on Sunday. And then by Monday, I was like, I was reset again. But on that Sunday night, I sat down and just did like a 20-minute, just like this. I was like, okay, here's where I'm at. You know what I mean? Like, I just completely worn, but also now I'm on the other side of it and I'm feeling optimistic about stuff and things like that. Cause I have heard from other founders too that like they wish they had kind of documented
Right.
the
It
process or
mm,
at least had like ways to sort of go back to some of those early
it
feelings.
it is it is a roller coaster, like startups. It's like an emotional roller coaster. So yeah.
Who who's your you for me?
Yeah.
No, wait, did I? Who's your the branches that you hold on to or
So
that like or help you be a trampoline to jump higher?
definitely, like, one of the best things that came out of going through the Antler program was that I was starting my business alongside 13 other businesses that got funded at the same time.
Oh yeah.
And so even, like, when you're going through things and it's like, I mean, you can't be an expert in everything when you're starting. It's like, so when I started, I'd never heard of, like, a safe note before, or, like, all these things that, I'm sort of passing on to you is
Yeah.
because we all have to learn them for the very first time, possibly.
Right.
But then if you've got 13 companies going through it, it doesn't matter if their business model is completely different. They still have to set up their company. They still have to raise money. They still have to do this. Like so, so yeah, I think, that community has been incredible, and we have all been very transparent. And I think also what happens is, like, I mean, we've been doing this for like nearly 5 years now. 5 years is a long time. Within 5 years,
Yeah, it is.
you'll go through burnout. You just,
Yeah, so
I remember turning up to events and people were like, "How are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm not great." They
yeah,
I'm normally like a
totally.
happy, like, positive person. I would just be like, "No, I'm actually, like, not great. Like, I'm actually, like, totally burnt out and, like, you know, my life isn't great at the moment. Like, why am I working? Why is it so hard?" So I think, having those people that you can turn to and just be, like, can jump on a quick call, or like we do, with a bunch of different people, like I'll do like a monthly, like, wine night, and it's just like you can just, like, talk really openly and go through sort of your highs and lows and process those with the other
Mhm.
people, but you're always there to support each other. Everybody's your biggest cheerleader as well.
Nice. That's great. Well, and it's good to have those so that you can, you know, it's getting out of the day to day and rebalancing again. Um, what so what's the when you hit 5 years, is that one? Did you hit one
Yeah.
from 0 to 1?
I don't
Have you
know.
hit one
What,
yet?
maybe when I hit 1 billion.
There you go. All right, you've set your one. The bar is set. No, what's next for like what do you see for the next 5 years of Miss Tyler? Like where do you see the focus and the
Well,
direction?
first of all, it's so crazy to think because, like, 5 years is a long time. It sounds like it's not a start. Like, it doesn't sound like a baby startup anymore. It's like 5 years
Yeah.
old. It's like kind of mature. But I still feel
Yeah.
like so early stage. But really, it's trying to get us to the next level. Trying to get us, to profitability. Trying to get us to, a much bigger scale. Really, I guess the biggest thing is at the moment the business is not self sufficient. So it's not sustainable,
Mhm.
which means that it needs funding. So I wanna get to a point where, it is sustainable, not just for the business, but for me as well.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
Totally.
I had this, I went to, a lunch with some people, in America, and, they were saying to me, "Oh, so you're based in Australia?" And I was like, "Yes, but I think we're gonna move to America next year." And this woman said, "Oh, you and your husband?" I said, "No, me and the business."
That's amazing. That's great.
So, yeah.
Where to New York?
Yeah. I love New York. It's like my
And you get too close. We'd be on the same time zone.
so
Oh, that'd be amazing. So you think you're gonna do that in the next little bit?
I think, if I don't move there, I'll definitely, I mean, I still get to the US like a few times a year. I would like to spend more time there. So if I don't move there, I'll be spending a lot longer there. Also,
Right.
we're an Australian company. A lot of US investors like want to invest in a Delaware C corp. So at some point, with our next raise, we might be required to flip up to a Delaware C corp. If an investor
Right.
says to me, "I'll give you $100 million, but you need to move to New York," okay, I would
Yep.
be
Oh, I've
there.
already booked my ticket. I'll see you next Tuesday. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly.
That's great. Well, that's so fun. Well, thank you for this. I love going from pre pre Miss Tyler all the way through and sort of what the future might be. So thank you so much for all the early stories.
You're welcome, and we'll continue it next week.
Yeah, exactly. And thanks for being my red pillar.
Oh, you're welcome.